take a 45. I think it's going to be.
It should. The kick's a little bit bigger.
Just really good.
Hey everybody, what's up? Let's be honest. We all knew this was going to happen. I'm going to try and make this super quick because it has the possibility of being a forever video. I'm going to do the dimensions first, then the weights. I may throw a field strip in there, but I've done a review on every single one of these guns, so probably for the sake of keeping it brief, I won't do that. Alright, the VP9 overall length is 7.34 inches, the P30 is 6.99 inches, and the P30L is 7.56 inches. The overall height for the VP9 is 5.41 inches. The P30 and P30L both are 5.43 inches. The overall width for the VP9 is 1.32 inches, and the overall width for the P30 and P30L on HK's website are listed with the lever at 1.37 inches. I don't have calipers. The barrel length for the VP9 is 4.09 inches. The P30 is 3.86 inches, and the P30L is 4.44 inches. The sight radius for the VP9 is 6.38 inches, the P30 is 5.85 inches, and the P30L is 6.42 inches. How you doing? All three pistols will be weighed back to back, and hopefully I don't misspeak, so I have to cut the video. For control, this magazine will be used for weighing all three. It's loaded with 15 rounds of 124 grain plus P Golden Saber ammunition, bonded. The VP9, loaded with the control magazine, weighs in at 2 pounds 1.2 ounces plussed up with a 124 grain Golden Saber bonded plus P round is 2 pounds 1.7 ounces, and the control TLR1S weighs in at a grand total of 2 pounds 5.7 ounces. Next up, the P30, loaded with that same magazine, 15 rounds, weighs in at 2 pounds 0.9 ounces, same plus up bullet, 2 pounds 1.3 ounces, and with the TLR1 weighs in at 2 pounds 5.4 ounces. Next up is the P30L. With the same control magazine, weighs in at 2 pounds 2.9 ounces. Same round plus and up is 2 pounds 3.3 ounces, and with the TLR1S is 2 pounds 7.4 ounces. Okay, with all that stuff out of the way, I'm going to do two guns at a time, just for how constricted this area is. Comparing these two, your obvious run-ins here are going to be three things that I'm going to hit on. Your overall length is going to be shorter with the P30, obviously, which is going to cut down three things of importance: the sight radius, the barrel length, and the Picatinny rail. On the Picatinny rail, the VP9 will very comfortably hold full-size lights like the TLR1S and the Surefire X300. It will hang off, but you see the whole rear housing from here back is on the rail. Whereas if you put it on the P30, the diagonal cut in the front is hanging off there. So the P30 is the smallest frame handgun that I'll use, P30 and the HK45C. The HK45C, you kind of have to play with it to get the TLR one on there. Most people are unsuccessful with that. I don't know the combination personally. I've seen one dude do it and then he was like, hey guys, look, I did it, and then disappeared. So honestly, this will go on there solid. I'll shoot with it. I have footage of me shooting with it on there, and it runs just fine. You can actuate it just fine also. It is what it is. Now, why would I buy the P30 over the VP9 when the VP9's super awesome? Well, the VP9's a little longer. The way I look at the P30 is it's kind of, and I hate doing it like this because I'm going to sound like somebody else and get crap for it. But the P30 is kind of like a detective's gun. It's short, it's a potent package, but the amount of gun that you have to rip out of the holster is a touch shorter than with the VP9. Both guns will do the same job because they'll hold the light. You're going to get a little easier accuracy out of the VP9 for two reasons. One, the sight radius, and two, the trigger. The way these triggers compare, obviously the VP9 is striker fired, so much shorter trigger pulls all the way around, short reset, and this is considered a single action only. You're not really pre-cocking it. It's a really easy trigger pull. It's not, you're not fighting a lot while you do it. Whereas with the P30L, obviously it's a hammer fired gun and you're fighting the hammer spring double action. After it cycles and preloads it, you get that reset. But here's the reset. Here's the main issue that everybody has, including myself. Slop, 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 break. Slop, break. Now it's definitely something that can be trained around and you can still shoot it fast as I've demonstrated. It's just going to take extra training. So I'll also say that this gun shoots smooth. It shoots very smooth. They both shoot smooth. All these guns shoot smooth. And I only shoot 124 grain or 147 grain ammunition. So that's either 124 standard load, which is closer to an, it's just shy of plus P. It's like a NATO load. It's around 1200 feet per second, you know, 1150-ish area. The plus P ammunition, which is between 12 and 1300 feet per second, and then 147 grain ammunition. So those are the only rounds I shoot, and both of these guns tame that recoil from those rounds. A lot of guys can throw 115s in these, and 115s make any shooter look good. You know, shooting 115 grain ammo, standard pressure, makes any shooter look good. So the real test is, can you shoot 124s or 124 plus Ps? That's the real test. But overall, you're dancing around the same dimensions when you're talking about the VP9 versus the P30. The height is obviously a little higher because this is a striker system, so they don't have to put clearance for the hammer to hit the firing pin and all that other stuff. It's a little simpler to make a striker, although if you saw the internal parts on the VP9, you'd understand it was anything but basic. In fact, you can kind of see what I'm talking about there. You have more of a complex control system in the top for all the internal safeties and everything like that, where the P30 on the left is much more straightforward. The recoil system on the VP9 is also a little more streamlined. Keep the bore axis a little lower, keep the profile a little lower, which is why the overall height is shorter on the VP9 versus the P30. Moving on to the barrels briefly, you'll see that the VP9 on the right hand side, I'm going to try and keep the orientation the same throughout the video there. I'm only going to compare the barrels on these two. You'll see that the thickness is close, but the P30 kind of looks a little bit thicker to me. It may just be how the barrel's crowned. The locking blocks are slightly different. P30, VP9, and while the feed ramps are very similar, both are very, very polished, you'll see that the way the top of the breech is cut is a little different. This one's kind of a slant cut, where this one's kind of a full semicircle cut up top. So those are really the only differences you're going to see. The barrels are not interchangeable for that reason though. This locking block and how they all work is not going to work. So if you think you're going to be able to buy a threaded barrel for a P30L or a P30L barrel and put it in your VP9, it is not going to happen. Alright, real quick on the frame thickness, because somebody thinks that they cheaped out on the VP9. You'll see that they're both pretty similar. Even, you know, the VP9 may even be a touch thicker. They're both built very, 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 very well, and you'll see the resurgence of the Mark 23 little spring in there. But the internal build quality on both of these is superb. I will say I like how long the rails are here versus these rails on the P30, but I mean, they both run, so it is what it is. But as far as the build quality and the polymer thickness, it's the same. I mean, holy shit. It's so hard to squeeze those, man. You're not getting Glock bend with these. Now, field stripping the two, I will say the VP9 is obviously easier than the P30 because you just lock it to the rear, flip that thing down, then push it forward. The slide's a little stubborn coming off, but it's a lot easier than dragging this all the way back to where it is and trying to take it down. But overall, VP9 versus the P30, doing a cost-benefit analysis. If you're looking at both of these on the counter and you're wondering the price difference between the two, why this one's going to be $200 to $300 more based on who's selling it, it's a hammer-fired gun and it costs X amount to make, and they're going to sell it for a certain price point. The VP9 was developed to be cheaper. Strikers are cheaper to make. This particular design has a little more internal parts than your average striker, but honestly, for HK to produce this gun was a lot cheaper than producing this one. So that's why this gun's still more expensive. You are going to get your money's worth for the P30. It's going to be very subjective when it comes down to the trigger. Some shooters are going to like it, some aren't going to like it. You can train around it if you want to put the time into it, but a lot of guys and girls are going to default to the VP9 because of how easy it is to shoot. This platform is super duper easy to get the grip panels adjusted, learn the manual of arms, and go out and shoot. This gun is super easy to shoot out of the box. The P30 does require a little more training and a little more instructing to a new shooter, but it doesn't take away from the gun's quality or shootability in the long run. But I digress. Alright, now switching over to the P30L. This is where you're going to get more contrast. The P30L will give you a little more barrel and a little bit more sight radius. The sight radius is a little subjective because it's not even 5/100ths of an inch, but the barrel length is pretty much 1/4 of an inch. So what that's going to net you is a little more velocity versus the VP9. Whether it's going to be enough to justify the differences is up to you. It's going to be a very negligible amount. It's not like the difference between a 16-inch barreled AR versus a 10-inch barrel AR, or even in pistols, it's not the difference between a 5-inch barrel and a 3-inch barrel. But it will net you just a touch more velocity. Whether that's repeatable or not, it is what it is. Also, the rail accommodates the light a little differently. You'll see it put it a little further back. It's almost at the muzzle, which is ideal. And the light will get a little less dirty when you're shooting it. It's still going to get dirty, especially if you shoot a lot of ammo that day, but it is what it is. I mean, if you prefer that, if you prefer the cleaner look, you know, that may factor into it. But really, is there going to be a huge difference between this and the VP9? No. They'll both accommodate the same lights. As far as the trigger goes, it's identical. Still get that sloppiness before your break. Smooth trigger though, very smooth trigger. They're very smooth in the P30 line. We'll give them that. And it's kind of a trigger you want to keep shooting. I don't know how to explain it. Everybody that has a P30 gun and they love it, they're like, it's a slow trigger, like it's a hard trigger to master, but you kind of want to keep shooting it because of how smooth it is. It's a weird thing. I don't know how to explain it. Where again, the VP9's short, quick, fast, and easy. So these two guns are a little more comparable because the barrel and sight radius is closer, but again, matching up the rears, this is the difference you're gonna see, and it is so slight. Like, no shooter is gonna be able to tell the difference. Here's a bullet for reference. That's the tip of a bullet. So really, the sight radius, I mean, I'll take any increase in sight radius I can get. Is that really going to be a justifiable difference in sight radius? No. I'm going to tell you right now, no, it's not. Okay, closing it out. My thoughts on these guns are, they all have their own unique little place. The P30 is definitely a duty size gun. The VP9 is also a duty size gun, but also kind of bridges the gap between the P30 and the P30L. I don't think that the VP9 has made the P30s obsolete. I really don't. The P30L is a very flat, soft shooting 9mm, and I only shoot 124 grain plus P, and 147s. I don't shoot 115s. So all three of these guns shoot smooth with those rounds. So when you see me shooting these guns, they're shooting a hotter round. When you look at these guns on a shelf in a gun store, the VP9 is going to be the cheapest option. A lot of people are going to say, why do I even bother with the P30s if the VP9's around 600 bucks and those are between I've seen them range anywhere between like $799 all the way to like $950 or $1,000 at those big box stores that price gouge. And a lot of people are going to look and be like, what's the difference? I like the trigger better on the VP9. I like X, Y, and Z better on the VP9. It's got better features, all that other stuff. Don't write off the P30s. They're still good guns. They shoot very accurately, and they're solid, solid guns. I have never had a performance issue. I know there's a lot of people that don't know that these are all these guns are really built around military rounds. The P30 series especially, they made the recoil assembly very, very tight, so it's a little ammo sensitive out of the gate. You can either lock the slide back overnight and then shoot your choice of ammo in it the next day, or just load the ammo that it was designed to take anyway. I did the same thing with the SIG. All my 9mm get 124 grain or greater diet. That said, I'm keeping my P30s. I even have plans to buy either another one of these in light LEM. A few people have asked me in the comments recently, do I prefer the light LEM trigger in the P series or the striker fire trigger in the VP9? I will say that it's really, really hard to beat this trigger. I'm not going to sit here and try to BS you. This trigger is really good. So it's really hard to beat that trigger. If you prefer the manual of arms of a hammer-fired gun like I do, these are always going to be around. If you don't really care between hammer-fired and striker-fired, like you just want an easy gun to shoot, you want something you take out of the box, and you can just take it to the range. Like you clean it, take it to the range, and come back home and clean it again. This VP9 is going to do it all day. They're all built solid. They're all going to run like freight trains, and they're all purpose-built weapons. This is just the newer gun, and they took the opportunity to change some things that they learned from the P30 series and translate that into something that we wanted as American shooters. They got a contract opportunity and they rolled with it, and they got a winner out of the gate. I mean, a lot of people are singing praises about the VP9. Do I think one gun will outperform the other? No. Do I really think that one gun edges another gun out? Not really. It's going to be the performance characteristics you're looking for when you're getting into a gun. And I know I've kind of said that like 3 different ways going into this, but just to try to really drive that point home, you can use all 3 of these for the same thing, get the same results, and be equally as happy with all 3 of them. It's going to come down to what gun fits you best, what gun fits your wallet the best, and which you shoot better. I would recommend trying to take both out, and there's a slew of people that own P30s and the VP9. I think that it taking the same super duper nice awesome magazine that it does, and by the way, this magazine is between $30 and $40. Don't listen to those uninformed armchair commandos saying that these are $50 or $60 magazines. $30 to $40 magazines consistently. If you're paying $50 or $60 for a P30 magazine, you better call a victim advocate because someone's having non-consensual intercourse with you. Don't pay that for that. It's $30 or $40. Go to Cross Creek. Go to Cross Creek, or even Top Gun Supply has them for good money. And there's plenty of sources out there. But anyways, back to the topic. You can do great with all 3 of these guns. I would say brand new shooter, it's going to be tough because I don't like pushing a gun that doesn't have safeties on a new shooter. But what I will say is I prefer a gun with no safeties. It's tough, man. I'm not getting rid of my P30s. You're going to see these, I mean, you're going to see more of these later. And I got a Jack Bauer video coming up with this one. My HK30. Anyhow, but the VP9 is definitely not something to write off, and it's definitely something to try out. If you want to get into an HK for a lower price point and still get a really, really solid gun, this isn't, a lot of people are mistaking this for less expensive equals cheaper. It's not. This is a quality firearm, and it will run forever. It's a great gun. It's really, really good. It's hard for me to stop singing my praises about this weapon. And I know a lot of people are having trouble finding them lately, but just be patient. You'll get your opportunity. But in the end, all 3 are great. The VP9, excellent gun. The texture difference is, you know, whatever you want to call it, but go try them out. Go rent a P30, go rent a VP9 if you can, or handle them in a store, take them out. If you're anywhere near Texas, send me a PM, and we'll go from there. Hope this comparison helped, as murky as it was, and thanks for watching. Take care of each other, stay safe, and support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.